Hey everybody, it's Rex, and you're watching the Brick Ninjas. Alright, today I'm going to talk about the rise of Skywalker. If you're wondering what's on my hand, I got a little bit of carpal tunnel, so this kind of helps get rid of it. I want to talk about that movie. It's going to be a spoiler review, and then I'm going to talk about where I've been for the last almost a year and why I haven't posted or done much. But let's get started with The Rise of Skywalker. I saw the movie. I didn't see it on opening weekend, and I did that on purpose. I didn't want to reward Disney for what I really feel like is ruining what Star Wars was and what it was about, and getting more into trendy politics right now and social justice warrior stuff, and kind of spitting. I really felt like mocking the original fans and saying, "Oh, we're just going to wipe you out and create new fans." And I think that's a really, that was a really crappy way to go about it. So I didn't want to reward that and give it a great opening. So I went, I think Monday or Tuesday or something. And I went with my kids. And just overall, before I get into spoilers, I'll say I didn't dislike it. It's hard to say that. I did dislike it, but it's worth seeing. And it's a movie I'll probably watch again. But after I watched it and kind of thought about it, I had a lot more to think about it. After I watched it and thought about it, I had a lot more to say about it. I've tried to do this review several times, and it's been very hard to get through. And the reason I realized that was one of the main things is, as I reviewed the movie, I can't help but think everything in this movie was done to counteract or to react to everything in the previous movie. And it pretty much neglects a lot of stuff from the original movies and the prequels. And it tries to correct things, but it's trying to correct things after a major disaster of what The Last Jedi was. I mean, you can think of The Last Jedi as like this hurricane that came through and just destroyed this area everybody loved. And now you're going to try and make it back to what it was before, but you don't have any of the original materials. You've lost the plans. You're kind of going from memory, but you're having to rebuild. Like after this hurricane that changed the landscape, it just did so much damage that you can never make it back the way that it was again. In the way that they were trying to do it, because they were just counteracting this garbage that came up before it. So that was what's really hard. It's hard. Last Jedi was so bad. I hated that movie so much, and so many people do, and rightfully so. That this movie, it's hard to really give it a fair critique, and I really struggle with it. I mean, there's so many things I could pick apart in the movie, but at the heart of it, I think there's something else going on. And after thinking about it for a couple days and trying to do this, I actually saw another video where a gentleman talked about this Reddit article or thread where somebody who worked on the this is not verified, you can take this with a grain of salt, but this person claims that they were close to the production of the movie. They saw a lot of the issues that happened, and they kind of explain it. Now, before The Rise of Skywalker came out, I looked at all the leaks and stuff. I followed, Doomcock and all those people, Geeks and Gamers. And I generally don't look for spoilers before I see a movie because I just want to go in with a fresh take on it. And for Last Jedi, I didn't look at anything because I want to just go in and give it a fair shake. But after that movie, I had to know, I'm like, well, where are they going with this? Now, the way that the leaks were presented sounded and looked terrible. When you watch the movie, it is kind of done in a way that you're willing to suspend disbelief for some things. But like I said, I walked away from the movie and I just kept thinking, why this, why that. The biggest thing I walked away from the movie with, and this is going to be starting spoilers now, is Palpatine should have been, if they were going to bring Palpatine back physically, they should have done it in the first movie. They should have introduced his character in the first movie. Look, he didn't die. He did know the secret on how to live, to a more immortality, and he's regaining strength. He's rebuilding, and a lot of what was left over from his fleet is still around, and he was able to control that and and keep it on the lowdown and rebuild. And this would have given reason to why Luke had to leave, because he was going to go look. Maybe he was going to go search for the original Jedi Temple to see if there was a way to destroy Palpatine. This would be ultimately the goal of the trilogy, is Luke is going to have to overcome something. He's going to have to train for the next generation, and he's going to have to defeat Palpatine and pass the baton on to Rey, and hopefully Kylo Ren, if he can switch him back to Ben. This ultimately would have been the best thing. They could have done a great trilogy arc on that whole premise right there, and built wonderful characters and capped off Luke, Leia, and Han Solo nicely and respectfully to the original fans, and left it with integrity and for fans to embrace what was coming next. But they didn't do that, and I really blame Kathleen Kennedy and Ryan Johnson for that, and ultimately, Kathleen Kennedy is the most responsible to me. And I don't know why you would buy something for $4 billion just to bury it and destroy it. I mean, you really have to have some issues to do that. And this movie really wasn't made by committee. Anyways, so they're going to bring Palpatine back. They should have brought him back in the first movie. It would have been fine with me. They still could have had Snoke, Kylo Ren, that whole thing. Maybe you have these two huge bad guys you're going to let battle while Luke is going to figure out how he's going to defeat Palpatine. And he's like, well, I know Palpatine's probably going to destroy Snoke. I'm not worried about that, but I'm worried about Palpatine. We've really got to get this thing capped off. And Leia would have been all for it. And maybe they could have had some backstory, given Leia some Force abilities, have her start training Rey while Luke's away. Maybe win some major battle in the first movie. And then you get to the second movie. Leia starts to recognize that Rey is beyond her ability, and she needs to go train with Luke. So she goes, finds Luke, and trains with him. Leia just started her training too late, which is fine. She can still be really powerful, but maybe not as skilled as Luke, because he learned earlier than she did. But you have Luke training Rey, and they're trying to figure out where she's from. The big reveal could have been this movie that she's a Palpatine, and I still think that's a fine idea, but they went about it all wrong. This whole movie is trying to make up for crap that should have been done in the first movie and the second movie, and I'm J.J. Abrams is a little bit to blame for that, but that's honestly where I feel about it, is that I just kept thinking the stuff should have been done earlier. You're cramming way too much in here. To address some of the other issues that people are having, I have no problem with Rose having a smaller role. I don't even blame Rose for the role she had in the last movie. That was a lot of Ryan Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy's decisions, and she's had to suffer for that. So, I think she was, I don't attack, her on that. I think she was fine. It would have been nice to maybe have her, if they were going to counter everything, they could have had her do a little bit more in this movie, to be like, okay, she came to her senses and she's not, whatever. Kerry Russell was a great actor in this movie. Her character, there's cool things about it, and then just things that her motivations to me were odd. Like, she's really angry at Poe because they used to be Spice Runners, and I guess he screwed her over really bad in the past. So she says, well, I'm just going to turn you into these guys because we'll collect some money off of you. And she literally does it, and then they somehow stop her, and then all of a sudden she's willing to help him. And that was a little too quick to me. Maybe they should have been, rather than turning him in, she just should have been like, you left me high and dry. What the hell's wrong with you? You really screwed me over. I still have feelings for you, and you really hurt me bad. And Poe maybe could have done some growing there. And I think those two characters could have come together. I thought she was cool. I thought it was cool they only showed her eyes. I appreciated that. I do wish that her and Poe would have shared a better moment at the end of the movie. But that's, I can't blame the actors. I really like Kerry Russell. She was great. Her and Matthew Rice were great in The Americans. It's a show, if you can, I would highly recommend watching. Really good show, really great acting, really great storylines. Really appreciated that show. And that's where I really gained a lot of respect for Kerry Russell, because she really tried to separate herself from the Felicity character, and more power to her. Other than that, Kylo Ren, crossing to the good side was okay with that. I thought that was a nice touching moment with Han Solo. As I watched him, I was very curious, like, God, how do they get him back and how much do they have to pay him? I was curious about that. But it was a good scene. And it definitely illustrates something that we're really missing in society, but it's coming back now, and that is the role of fatherhood in children's lives. Fathers are very important in children's lives. And for the last 30 to 40 years, we've kind of dismissed that. Our culture really has. It's made fun of men and fathers with Homer Simpson and Al Bundy. And I love The Simpsons, and I loved Married with Children. But I look back, that's you're really mocking fatherhood and the the family structure, the family unit, and how important that is to society, a functioning society and a peaceful society and civilization. Um, we all make mistakes, I understand that, but those were seriously flawed characters that were just made to mock. Um, so I did like that in the movie. That I don't know if they did that intentionally or not, but that was good that they Han Solo got some closure. Ben got some closure. Why he threw away his lightsaber, I thought was kind of silly. I think he should have maybe worn some different clothes. Maybe he should have worn something lighter and gray or something. I do wish him dying at the end was kind of silly to me. I don't know how he could give her life, but she couldn't give him anymore. I mean, it was just didn't make sense, especially as powerful as Rey is supposed to be. Now, I will say something that another reason I think they should have brought Palpatine back was Palpatine is a seriously powerful Sith. He's got those lightning Mr. Sparkle fingers like they do in Thor, but he's got those lightning fingers, and he seems to be, really in tune with the Force and the ability to hide himself and all this stuff. So that would kind of explain why Rey is so powerful. I do wish that Rey would have suffered some injury in the second, or at least this movie. She should have lost a hand or a limb at something. She should have had to pay a price to come to terms with who she is, accept it, and be willing. The threshold for her and the goal for her should have been, I don't think she should have been a Skywalker. I think she should have kept Palpatine, but saying, I'm going to use your name for good. I'm going to free this galaxy, and I'm going to undo everything you did. That would have been a better goal for me, something I could have bought more into and could have related to and felt better about. And the way she defeats the Emperor is very silly to me. Just with two lightsabers. I mean, it was very weak. And like I said, then her dying and Ben coming back, giving her life, and her coming back, and then him dying. It just was weird. And her taking on the moniker of Skywalker was very silly to me. It's just like, oh, anybody can just take the name. Luke never really adopted her, neither did Leia. That's another thing I want to talk about. Carrie Fisher was awesome as Leia. I really appreciated her in all the movies. I don't think they should have used her in this movie. I think they should have let her die, and the character die in the second movie. She should have died when she got sucked out into space and not done the Mary Poppins crap. I could have accepted her dying a warrior's death, and it was hard, but it was gritty and it was dark, and I like when Star Wars gets a little bit dark, and I would have appreciated that more had they done that. But, I feel like that decision was made to please the female boss, and was just unnecessary and really stupid, and I felt like mocking and really did a disservice, I feel, to Carrie Fisher and the legacy of Leia and Carrie Fisher's legacy. Character should have passed away. Maybe she could have come back as a Force ghost or something in this movie in some form or fashion. They could have used this old footage, but whatever. The other reason I didn't like her in this movie was, as I watched the movie, all I could think of every time I saw her was, this is old footage. She's dead. None of this was shot with her. And all her interactions with Rey were very odd and awkward. I know some people thought they pulled it off well, but they didn't pull it off well. Every time I saw Rey talking to her, I felt like she was talking to a mannequin, and then the responses you'd get from Leia were disconnected from reality and just didn't make any sense. There was no real exposition for her to have to explain anything other than, oh, always trust a droid, and that's like the main line I remember, but it just was weak. It was really weak, and I felt like such a disservice. And I feel like people who watch the movie forever from now on, you're always going to be thinking, yeah, she was dead, and this is what they had. So you're just watching a ghost in a movie, and it's almost like watching somebody with dementia in a way, and not that Carrie Fisher had dementia, but she just responds so awkwardly to all these moments. It just doesn't make sense. It's so kind of pulls you out of the movie. So I really wish they would have let her character go in the second movie. They could have easily done that in the second movie by not showing Luke disappear at the end, just showing him waking up and looking at the two suns, and you cut to the next scene, and he's still alive. So this movie, maybe he could have done more, and he should have done more. I did like where Luke caught the lightsaber and said, you know, a Jedi's weapon is to be treated with more respect. I appreciated that. And him kind of saying, yeah, I was wrong about some things. It fit the narrative of the past few movies, but still, like I said, those decisions were made to undo crap and garbage that was done in the second movie that really made fans, that really disenfranchised fans. A lot of people were not excited to see this movie. They were like grumbling, and even I was. Even after The Last Jedi, I felt like there's nothing more for me to care about. You've killed off the heart of this series. It's always been about the Skywalkers, and it really should have capped off with Luke overcoming something, you know, maybe getting pulled to the dark, but having to fight that and just giving himself to defeat the Emperor. Kind of like, it was really cool at the end of Tron how Kevin, which is Jeff Bridges' character, just had to use everything he had to defeat Clue. And he gave himself for that. He died for that, to save his son and to end this thing. He died to save his son and get Korra out, and whatever could be next. You know, he made sure of that. He gave his life. And Luke could have done that and gone out nobly and passed the baton to Rey, and Rey could have been, you know, you could have made Rey more powerful. She could have been the next chosen one, or the chosen one, to kind of bring balance. And Luke was kind of a part of that, making sure she was positioned to do that. And then you could have continued with her trying to maybe get, you know, if they didn't have Ben come back good, maybe her going after Ben and seeing if she could bring him back, you know, and say, look, the Force is strong in the Skywalker family and the Palpatine family. We need to use this for good. We can't reverse roles now. We both need to be good to bring order and balance back to the universe. There's so many different things they could do, and I don't know why they, you know, I know why they did them. It's because of, you know, the producer and the president of Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, has an agenda, and she's really good at disguising that. And I'm really upset about that. It's really hurt a beautiful franchise. Something that happened in the movie that I reflected on immediately when it happened was the very beginning, when the title came up, Star Wars, and the music comes on, people started clapping. And I remember people doing this when I saw the prequels at the theater 20 years ago. People were clapping. And when I thought about it, I was like, man, you know, people really love this franchise. They really love the story. They identify with the characters. They want it to be good, and they want to connect with it. They want to get out of the world for a moment and see something good and something that makes sense and something that has integrity and is respectful to them, because those previous movies were. Those original trilogy movies were respectful to an audience that it assumed was educated and smart enough to understand what was going on, and didn't try to pull real fast ones on people. No, and even though they weren't perfect, the story and the heart was there, and that's where these movies lose it. They just don't have the heart. They're almost trying to be propaganda or something. And even Mark Hamill, whom would probably be more on the side of Kathleen Kennedy in her philosophy on things, disagreed with how they did the movies. And I give him credit for that he was just like, this is not my Luke. This is not what my Luke would do. And even when they asked him, oh, is this the last one? He's like, I hope so. And I understood why he said that. It was kind of painful. Because I think if he would have gone out as a hero, I think it would have been like, yeah, I probably is. I wish I could do more, but I don't think I'll be able to. And that still would have been enough of an answer to not give away anything. So that's kind of where I left with the movie, and in the end. And I'll say one more thing. I thought it was a total ripoff. I wouldn't consider it a tip of the hat. I thought it was a total ripoff. When it was a total ripoff of Marvel Avengers Endgame. At the end of that movie where Thanos says, you know, I am inevitable, and Iron Man says, I am Iron Man, and snaps. That's a beautiful scene. And that capped off where everything should have ended. Kevin Feige handled that whole series beautifully and with respect to the characters, the core of what those where they come from in the comics. and was relatable to people, and it should have, like I said, ended with Iron Man, and it did end with Iron Man like it was supposed to. This movie stole that line, but it gave all the credit and power to Ray, who Daisy Ridley's a great actress. I think she handled the character well. However, I think the character is just too perfect. Anyways, the part they ripped off was when Palpatine says, "I am all the Sith," and she's like, "When I'm all the Jedi." It's a total direct rip off from "I'm Inevitable" and "I'm Iron Man." Same thing, and it's just weak. It didn't work for several reasons. It was a total rip off, and it didn't work for several reasons because there was no Ray didn't have anything. She didn't have to get some MacGuffin to defeat Palpatine. She just had to get a MacGuffin, which is an object in the movie, to find Palpatine. All the powers in her, all the Jedi in her. They could have set that up better. They really could have. And I don't think that should have been the way she defeated him. I think she should have had some better training, and I think Luke should have had to defeat him. And maybe Rey could have helped in some way, and then pass the baton on to her, and then see where she can go. And we could make 3 more movies, and you could sell way more crap and merchandise. Part of the reason the merchandise has died is because that second movie was so bad, and you killed it for the people who spend the money on the toys. The kids aren't buying the toys. The parents are buying the toys and the merchandise for the kids. The parents are buying the t-shirts, the hats. They're buying the tickets to Disney World. The kids aren't buying that stuff. So I'm kind of digressing. Anyways, after all that, everything was comparable to that movie to me. Please excuse if it's getting a little darker. I'll explain that a little bit, why it's getting darker in the room that I'm recording in, and why the room looks completely different. But if you go on Reddit, and I'm going to leave a link below, there's a really good article. And like I said, take it with a grain of salt. Doesn't mean it's true. But after watching all the leaks from those, other YouTubers, seeing the movie, I have experience in video production. I've worked in a lot of productions. What this post says seems very legit. And it kind of puts pieces together that I thought were missing. Or when I watched the movie, I was like, what? This just doesn't make sense. J.J. Abrams is better than this. He usually likes to make things that make sense, even though there's parts and things he can't handle very well. He is good at kind of keeping stories consistent, and with a common thread going through them, so you can follow. Even though some of the outside parts can be a little wonky, he does pay attention to that kind of stuff. So I was like, gosh, I don't know if I can blame this on him, especially from what the leaks say. There was 3 different versions of this movie. There was the first one that apparently fans really hated. Bob Iger ordered a reshoots and some additional edits. That scored even lower. And then apparently they went to Lucas, and he had some things that they added to the movie, and that scored a lot higher. But apparently the movie we got was the Bob Iger cut, from what I understand and what this article says. But the article basically says that Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm's story team didn't really like J.J. Abrams, but I think she was kind of forced to go with him because she didn't think anybody else could do it and start the franchise off right. She really liked Rian Johnson, and apparently J.J., I guess after he saw what Rian Johnson didn't really like it. Now I know you can go back and say, oh, J.J. said all these great things in articles and videos and stuff back then. Yeah, that's because he's protecting his job. And it's not just in video production, but if you're just a wise person and you didn't work well with somebody, you really don't like what somebody did, you're not going to talk trash about that person publicly, because that's going to hurt your chances at working with maybe the other boss again later. Or working on other productions, because if other houses like Warner Brothers, Paramount, and whoever else at the time, Fox was its own separate entity, see that, oh, this guy's just trash talking everybody, they're not gonna use you anymore. It's a very video production and the video world in Hollywood is a very shallow place, not a place of really as great as the stories that they tell and they can do from that place. A lot of the people that work in there are very shallow or very, very sensitive, and they can't take criticism very well. So, of course, JJ's not going to say that kind of stuff. He's going to back off. Anyways, they went with JJ for the first one, and then apparently Lucasfilm really liked Rian Johnson and what he wanted to do, and Kennedy and the story team really wanted Luke dead in the second movie, and that's why they did that, and that's why they loved Rian Johnson so much. When Colin Trevorrow was supposed to be doing episode 9, he saw what they did in episode 8 before, while they were in production. He said, I can't, the movie I want to make, the story I want to tell I can't do it with what you're doing in this movie. I really think you're going to hurt fans. I think this is a big mistake. I'm against it. Please listen to me. I'm trying to help everybody here. JJ got along with Trevorrow really well. Didn't get along with Rian Johnson. Kennedy was like, nah, we're not changing anything. This is the way it is. If you can't work around it, too bad, you're gone. And didn't really like him anyways. So he quit and left the project, because if you can even go back and watch, there's Mark Hamill interviews where he's like, yeah, I talked to Colin and we were on the same page with my character before they ever made 8. And that everything got derailed in 8 because of what Rian Johnson did. So if you read this article, it basically just kind of goes into a lot of the stuff that was happening behind the scenes. Apparently, JJ only agreed to do episode 9 after they fired Colin if the studio guaranteed that they wouldn't interfere with the production. They'd let him make the movie that he wanted to make, and they wouldn't send him notes and stuff all the time. One of the things that happens especially in Hollywood, is when you make movies, a lot of the people who are financing it, which are the producers, or they're the people who are finding the money to make the movie, and the people giving the money will demand changes or just write notes that are crazy to the director every day. Even though they're not on the production, they're not seeing what's happening there, they're making all the money to make the movie happen. So a director feels obligated to kind of follow those directions sometimes. And if they don't, they can be fired and they can be replaced, as we've seen happen in, I think, Solo. That kind of happened with the 2 directors for that movie. And I don't know how good or bad their original movie may have been. They had to come and bring in a different director. From Mayberry. I can't remember his name. Probably remember it in a minute. Anyways, so directors will get those notes, and it usually drives them nuts. There's a really good Joe Rogan interview with Rob Zombie, who talks about this, how he was making movies and was getting these crazy notes every day. And that's really what happens, is these people, oh, this song is popular, put it in the movie. Oh, this person's popular, get them in the movie. Oh, this thing is popular right now, make sure it's in the movie. And it's like, it doesn't, hey, I just went back, I've been shooting for a month now, I've got all this stuff, if I do this now, it's going to discredit or ruin everything else I did. Oh, we don't care, put it in there anyways. And that's where you'll see a lot of, sometimes you watch a movie and you're like, why is this there? What happened here? Well, that's studio meddling. And that can happen a lot, especially nowadays. So JJ didn't want to make the movie unless he was guaranteed he wouldn't get that. And he wanted to work with Lucas. So JJ went and worked with George Lucas, came up with a story, and they started shooting that movie, which was going to have a different character. I don't follow the cartoons very much, the Star Wars Rebels and the Clone Wars. I've watched some of them, but I don't really follow it that closely. But I know that they were going to use a character from that to be the main villain, and it was supposed to make a lot more sense. And a lot of that movie, I think like 60% of it was shot, and then I don't know, somehow the studio got involved, where I guess Iger came in, and maybe at Kathleen Kennedy kind of urged him or something, and they didn't like what was going on. This was terrible. We're going to change all this stuff. So they started making all kinds of changes, and then JJ got disenfranchised, and he went along with it. He was going to finish his contract, collect his paycheck, and do the best he could. But he's not, from what I understand and what this article says, he's not happy with the final product. And it's not, he doesn't want to own it like he does his other works. And I kind of feel bad for him, because I don't really think that this movie is really his fault. I feel like he did the best that he could with what he was given, and try to navigate those notes and all that interference as best he could. And even now, I thought he was kind of good to say, like, yeah, if you don't like the movie, then I understand. Like, this is something everybody owns. That's respectful to the original audience. And then I thought he said this was interesting. He's like, and if you do like it, well, I recommend that you get your head checked. That's funny, but I think that's a little bit of a tip of the hat, or a little bit of a reveal of saying, I'm not completely responsible for this, so please don't blame me, because I don't even like it. But But like I said, I'll put this article there below. I thought it was really good. It's really telling. It just says there was a ton of studio interference. And it kind of explains why Lucas didn't go to the premiere, because the movie they were going to make was more in line with his original treatments that Kathleen Kennedy and Bob Iger tossed in the trash after they asked him to consult and kind of left him off of. I think this really gives a good peek behind the curtain, and I know it's taken with a grain of salt, but I feel there's a lot of credibility to this article, to this thread, this post on Reddit. It makes a lot of things make sense to me. With all that said, I'm curious, did you like the movie? Did you feel how I did about Princess Leia, feeling kind of out of it? I wish they would have left her out. Did you think they did that well? Do you think I'm crazy and this Reddit thing is stupid and it's just garbage? Do you really like this new trilogy, or do you not like this new trilogy? How do you feel about it? A, do you think they're going to make more? And B, if they do, are you going to watch more? I want to make a prediction. I think that either Jon Favreau or Kevin Feige are going to be named the president of Lucasfilm within the next 12 months. Getting into that a little bit, Kevin Feige was the producer for Marvel movies, from Iron Man all the way to the end. I think he's done a masterful job of telling all those stories. Some of those movies weren't perfect, but they weren't terrible. They're still rewatchable, and they fit within the storyline and where everything goes to at Endgame. So Kevin Feige's really good at that. And if he's a producer, a lot of times it's like, what does a producer do? A producer is kind of the manager of a movie. Like, think of a movie like it's a business, like it's a Best Buy or a fast food restaurant or something. That person kind of is in charge of everything, making sure that all the products there, all the employees are trained, everything's getting done that needs to get done. They're like, they own it, basically. Whenever you see a movie win Best Picture, you'll notice that the producer always gets the award, and that's because the producer's in charge of the whole movie. They get all the funding for the movie, they help sell the movie, they help get it distributed, and they kind of go back and check, and they have a lot of control over the director and the script and the actors and all those things. The final decisions really come down to them. Directors are just, they have the vision, they tell the actors how they want the characters to be played. They tell the cinematographer or the director of photography the same thing, the guys who kind of are in charge of the cameras, and in a sense, like, I want you to push in when you're talking to this guy, or I want you to go around this character as he's talking. I want you to get these different angles because I want to get this feeling or that feeling from them. I want to turn the world around. I want a Dutch angle, which is where you start sideways and then you work to normal, or you can go the opposite way to kind of show how things are turning upside down. There's a beautiful example of a Dutch angle, or kind of how the visual flips the world upside down in a movie called I just did a review on it. It was really good too. Upgrade. There's a scene where the main character gets severely injured and he watches his wife die in front of him, and the camera pans up and then just does this flip, which is just like the world has turned upside down for this character. Directors will kind of call that, they'll work with directors of photography, or like I said, cinematographers, to come up with those. So a director doesn't have complete final say, but they do have a lot of weight and a lot of they're very important to the final product. All right, so that's my take on that. Let me know in the comments what you guys think below. Did you like the movie? Are you happy with how it went? Do you think that this article is really good and kind of puts the pieces together for you? Do you want to see more Star Wars with Rey? Where else could they go? What do you think of my ideas? Do you think that they should have started this back in the first movie and maybe had Luke finish it off and pass it on to Rey? I'm curious what your thoughts are. I always appreciate you guys watching. Now, to get to where have I been the last roughly 12 months? And by the way, it's New Year's Day 2020, so I'm hoping to kind of, now that I got more time and some things have been, creases have been pulled out of my life, I can get back to kind of doing this normally again. I do want to review some other movies like Joker and The Irishman, and some other movies that I've seen recently that I thought were really good. And Joker was a masterpiece movie. I think it said a lot about our culture, our society. It was a beautiful movie. I think Joaquin Phoenix did a great job and honored Heath Ledger's version of the character and didn't really mess with that and still left it intact, but did do something new and unique and cool with the character, which I was just blown away by. Anyways, where have I been for the past 12 months? Well, I was living in Florida with my family. Kind of lived there the last 21 years. And was just having, wasn't really happy there. Always wanted to move out west. My wife did too. And we never really planned to stay in Florida that long. Even though Florida's nice, it's not for everybody. I do appreciate, I like when there's seasons where there's cold and hot and warm and cool, spring, winter, fall, and summer. Florida's just kind of continuous summer. It's kind of the opposite of Game of Thrones. Summer is coming. That's what they should make a movie of Florida. Florida of Thrones or Game of Florida. Summer's coming, but it's like perpetually summer there, and it's really hot and humid, and there's a lot of alligators everywhere and flying roaches, and just not really my place. I'm originally from the Midwest, and I appreciate, like I said, seasons and cooler weather. So wife and I have been working for the last 12 months, a little over a year actually, to move out to Utah, and that's where we live now. And it's a really cool place. I don't really share a lot of the cultural makeup of the state, with the people, but I will say the people here are really cool. They're really nice. That's like the biggest striking thing to me. Like, people here are very industrious, and even when you go to like a restaurant or a store, the employees there really want to help you. They don't really have a chip on their shoulder or feel bad about anything. And I've had some really good interactions here. So like I said, for the last 12 months, we've been really trying to get out here, and I found a great job, and we were able to move out here, and a lot happier and having a good time. Been out here for a couple months now and really, really love it. In fact, it's snowing right now, which is, I really miss. I know a lot of people complain about snow in winter, but winter isn't that bad to me. Like I said, I like having an offset from summer and fall, spring. I like all that stuff. And I think the snow is cool. I got kids. They love the snow and making snowmen and all that kind of cool thing. So that's where I've been for the last 12 months, kind of relocating. And it just took a lot of time and energy, kind of getting out of where we were to get here. It was incredibly expensive. I think it's really good to move if you can. It's not for everybody, but move. If you're not happy where you are, try somewhere new. See if you can get around. So, if you can't change the people around you, then change the people around you. And that's kind of what we did in a sense. And we're just loving it out here. And I love the weather. And I love the people. And it's just awesome. So to anybody from Florida, I still love Florida. I really love South Florida. I love Miami and Fort Lauderdale. I lived there when I was younger. And those were fun places, really party places. Those were cool. But I'm happy to be kind of in a Western place now where I've never lived out West, and I've always wanted to. Like I said, I was from the Midwest, so I'm used to snow and stuff. So anyways, kudos to you, my Florida peeps, Utah people watching this, or anybody else in the country. That's where I've been. And thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to watch any different movies or review them. Older movies, newer movies, whatever they are. I love movies. I love stories. Keep the conversation going. Bye.